I dabbled in the Beanie Baby market in its heyday. I'll share my story, because it has some parallels with what's going on in crypto. And I learned a lot about speculative markets and bubbles and ways to exploit these markets. Many people like myself are into collecting things. It could be comic books, it could be coins, it could be ceramic chickens. There are people who collect for enjoyment, and there are others who are more business-centric, and also look for ways to take their interests and monetize them, if only to help support the hobby. Like most people, I collected all sorts of things, from rocks and coins to stamps and comics. But as I got older, occasionally I'd see I could create a little income here and there. Fast forward a few years, and my mom was all into Beanie Babies. I had never heard of them, but she kept giving them to me here and there. I was never a plush person, but I could appreciate the creativity that went into the designs, and there often was something for everyone. If you liked cats, birds or dogs, they had different breeds. If you liked sharks or had a school mascot, you could find matching ones. It was a fun little interest. Then I started to see how getting new ones became a kind of game, a hunt, to see where they were, and quite an endorphin rush, if you managed to stumble upon a new cache of the beanies. I found it interesting that these stupid stuffed animals would turn otherwise suburban housewives into single-minded, mall-roaming, plush predators. And when they wanted a certain beanie, they'd pay a lot of money for it. In short order, I realized there was a bit of a market for this. The early days of eBay, Beanie Babies were probably one of the major things they sold tons of. It was a crazy, lucrative marketplace. I'd see something I paid $3.50 for yesterday, sell for $40 on eBay the next day. So I got into it. It was also a way to bond with my mother. We often didn't have a lot in common, and she really enjoyed that I got into her hobby. That was probably the main impetus, but once I started paying attention, I realized I could make some money with these things. After amassing a collection, I realized I needed to keep track of them. I wrote a database application. At the time I was a lead developer for a pretty big .com project. I was in charge of picking the technology they use. The software alone cost probably $50,000, but I needed a pet project to get up to speed using the technology, so I decided to write a Beanie Baby database. It quickly turned into a mini beanie stock market where people could input their collections and I'd keep track of the market value of each beanie and generate statements of the value of their beanie portfolio. I offered the service for free. It was originally just a test system to learn the tech. But pretty soon, it became a pretty active place. By this time, I was now selling beanies wholesale. I'd had inside contacts at various retail stores, and they'd sell me the beanies in bulk before they even hit the shelves. Then I'd flip them on eBay and make 10x return. I was also hitting thrift stores looking for older, rare, obscure ones, and I actually did find a few really rare ones. When McDonald's offered tiny beanies, I was one of the idiots in the drive-thru ordering 20 Happy Meals, hold the fries and drink, just give me the toys and the burgers at a time. I'd put the burgers in the freezer, and eat them over the next week. It was absurd. Like most people, towards the end, I started to feel like the company was manipulating things. The whole notion of retiring a beanie was basically an illusion, and Time made some really stupid, amateur mistakes in their quest to squeeze as much money out of their dumbass fans. They would retire a beanie, knowing full well they had a million of them in a warehouse somewhere, that they would continue to distribute. At first this worked well. People would see retired beanies at the store and buy them all up. But then the retired ones just kept coming and coming. A year after they were retired, you'd still see them show up in places. People were getting stuck with stacks of retired beanies that were more common than non-retired ones. This is what really made people say fuck it. But, by this time, I had a different scheme. I wasn't paying any attention to what the company was saying was rare or not. I had my own data. With my beanie stock exchange site, I ran my own analysis based on the collections people input, and I was able to identify which beanies were actually rare. There were so-called common beanies that were very hard to find, but not retired. There were areas of the country where certain beanies were not shipped. I took all this information and used it to determine what I was buying and selling, so even when people were getting screwed by the company, I was still making good money. I found that by running my exchange, I could see all the insider stuff. I knew what people were looking for, and I could run deals for them. Obviously this wasn't illegal in beanies, like it might be with a more regulated market like stocks. So I took the insider information I had and used it to my advantage. I didn't hurt anybody. I just figured out a way to create business IQ that could generate revenue. There wasn't really much of an angle where ethics were compromised. I still had to source beanies in the real world, If I could have transferred them digitally, the exploitation potential would have been insane. But when it comes to crypto exchanges, they can do the same thing, and it is questionably ethical because of various laws. But when you have that kind of insider info, of course you're going to use it, especially if you're in a new industry that you think isn't subject to much scrutiny. I learned a bunch of lessons in the process. When the market collapsed, I was up, but I ended up sitting on a pretty large inventory of beanies, that to this day, I am not sure what I can do with. I could barely sell them for what I paid wholesale, so they just sit packed up in one of my garages. So be it. It was interesting while it lasted. What I learned about this was that the whole notion of scarcity being tied to value is a huge steaming pile of bullshit. If you can get in early in any of these highly manipulated markets, you can profit, but the odds are against you, and at any time it can all crumble. The people who really make the money are the brokers, the people who aren't really hodling, but instead are helping others play the game. I'd like to say beanies was my last highly speculative market I played, but it wasn't. I dabbled in MTG, I bought a beta Black Lotus for under $200 at one point, and other hobbies as well. I lost in some. I made bank in others. In the end it was more gambling than investing. I've learned that it's very intoxicating, the idea that you can get rich quickly, but it's also very stressful and chaotic. Picking something more modest and building it is much more rewarding in the long run. But most importantly, if you play these games, you have to find something useful in the here and now. This is what's so bad about crypto. There is no instant gratification. There is no immediate utility. It's not even an actual transaction emo. It's all delayed gratification. At least with a beanie, if I didn't pay some crazy amount for it, I got something I can enjoy even if I never resell it. I really worry about the people who are too invested in crypto. Most will not have anything to show for it, and I'm not sure they'll even understand why. Thank you for watching, like and subscribe for more content.